Now, media buying is the process of purchasing advertising in a manner that would get you the lowest possible cost and the highest return on your advertising investment. And sometimes we say we want to get the highest lifetime value for our clients, which I'll explain in a minute. Now, many companies do this in-house. They just go on Facebook, because Facebook make it easy for you, or YouTube. They got a big old button that says, boost this, or create an ad. And you go for it. But you are engaged in a process where there is actually some rules of the game. There are people that actually get paid to do this. I did this for many years myself. Sometimes it'll be a position in an organization, and sometimes it's a company that specializes in media buying. Now, media buyers, they have relationships with the big media companies. So sometimes dealing with a media buyer can actually get you a lower cost on your advertising, because some of the media buyers, and I was notorious for that, I would pass along my media buying commission oftentimes to my clients, but I never marked it up. Some media buying companies even mark it up. So they would actually charge you more than the company would charge you if you went out there and bought it yourself. So media buying is a discipline, it's a profession, and media buyers can be very good at negotiating rates, providing demographic information, data on listeners and viewerships and things like that. So many companies, large companies, they do engage in media buyer because you're talking about literally dealing with millions of dollars. So let's talk about some of the costs involved. Now, when you're buying media, there are some costs, and you're going to pay for that media. I'm going to give you 3 acronyms that you should be aware of at all times. The first one is cost per acquisition, CPA. That means you're buying media and you're spending money based on a certain action. In other words, if I spend this money, I know A is going to happen. Either I'm going to pay you based on a sale or something else. Now, cost per action is also another way to evaluate media. That means how much did it actually cost you after the fact. Let's say if you went out and bought, let's say $100 worth of media, you got 10 sales, then the cost per action or the cost per acquisition was $10. So CPA is a very popular term when you start talking about media buying. Another is CPM. CPM stands for cost per mille. That's M-I-L-L-E, which is a Latin term for 1,000. So cost per mille means the cost for 1,000 impressions. Now, an impression is not as important as an action or let's say a click. But cost per mille, that means we're going to put 1,000 people is going to see this, and this is the cost for 1,000 CPM. Another is called CPC, which is cost per click, which is how much you're going to pay if somebody clicks on that ad. And so if you're doing like Google AdWords or something like that, you're usually doing a CPC deal. If you're doing Facebook, it's more along with CPM. So you need to understand the terminology too, because if you don't understand the terminology, you're not going to appreciate the metrics or the KPIs. So let's say if you have a typical Facebook ad, this speaking some specifics, you might have a CPC or cost per click of about 50 cents to $1. That's in the ballpark. So you're going to spend about $1 to get a click. And CPM, that means if you look at it on a CPM basis, you're going to spend about, I guess about $20 to $30 on a CPM on a Facebook campaign. You spend $50, you're going to reach somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 people. That's your reach. Okay. Now this is going to vary because, like I said, Facebook has a very complicated algorithm. Type of media, the amount of your buy, the season available media that they have to sell. So none of these numbers are finite. It's always fluid and flexible. But you do have to understand where what the basics are, or at least know if you're in the ballpark, so you can make some evaluation. Now, one of the components of successful media buying, you have to watch the numbers. You have to know your numbers, because the rule of media buying is you buy more of what works and you buy less of what doesn't. So if you're buying media, let's say 5 different types of media, you're on a radio station, TV station, social media, you're doing some type of mailing campaign, and one is just jumping off the charts. My easy way to do the rule of thumb is just to get rid of the bottom one and take that money and put it on the one that's performing. Now, the ultimate way to know if media is working is you get more customers. Pretty simple, right? So you do a custom account at the end of the campaign or periodically, usually within a month, you have some type of data. And you want to buy your media usually about in quarters. It takes about a quarter to get a real good feel. In other words, 3 months. 3 months will give you a pretty good idea of how you're doing. 1 month is really just not enough. And that's a mistake. Many rookies, they do a week or two, a month, and they go, oh, it didn't work. Let's move on. Well, it takes a month for people to actually see you. It takes about 5 to 10 impressions for folks to see you for the first time. So you want to do, and then you may not have spent enough to get the impressions to get that top of mind. So since you can't really wait a month to see if the sales are working, there are some indicators along the way that might tell you, in lieu of a sale, how things are going. We call those KPIs, key performance indicators. That might be how much traffic is going to your website since you started the campaign, how many likes you're getting on your Facebook page or your YouTube account or things like that. Might tell you how much engagement is going on if you have a store, how much foot traffic you're getting. So you don't have to wait until the end of the campaign to know if it's working. And sometimes you can make corrections in between. Like I do a lot of media buying for one of my clients who rents out office space. And we'll start a campaign and I will watch those analytics and those KPIs in the middle of the campaign. And sometimes if things are going south, particularly if you're trying something new, it's like, whoa, that didn't have the effect that I thought it was going to have. Let's go back to where we were doing before. So you really have to master those numbers. You cannot just, go out here nilly-willy and start spending money and expect to get results. Now, another thing to remember that we talked about lifetime value, that all customers are not created equally. So when you're going out here, you're trying to get a customer, you have to remember that you want a certain type of customer as well, because that's going to affect your return on your investment. So we call that lifetime value. Some people can go out here and the old trick in the game used to be you can go out here and handing out dollar bills on the street and get customers. But those customers are they quality customers? Are they going to stick around? And the way to value that is through what we call lifetime value. And that's how much money they spend over the course of the time you know them or you're working with them. And we usually kind of average it out to about a year. So if they're going to spend, $1,000 a month over 1 year, that's a lifetime value of $12,000. And that means you can actually spend more to get that type of customer through your CPC, CPA, and CPM, because you're getting the return on that investment. Other factors you want to be aware of when buying media is your frequency. Frequency is simply how often does the ad run. Sometimes we don't run it enough. And that can pull down your results and make you kind of turn you off about advertising in general, because you didn't give it enough. You didn't run enough ads. It just wasn't out there enough times. The other factor is reach. Reach just simply means how many people saw the ad. So you can run it, every 5 minutes, but if only 10 people are watching it, you're not going to have the reach. You might have the frequency, and vice versa. Sometimes you can reach 1,000 people or 10,000 or 1 million, but if you only run it a few times, it's not going to have the desired impact. And the other thing is impressions. Impressions slightly different from reach, because impression can be based on total views or repeat views. So you might have what we call unique impressions. That means one person saw it, where you might do total impressions where one person can watch it 4 or 5 times. So you may want to look at the difference between reach and impressions, and when you're analyzing those analytics to make sure you're getting the results you want. Keep your goals in mind as well, because if you're trying to build your brand, then you want to focus on the CPM. You want to get more impressions out here. You want to get that, make sure those CPM numbers are right. You want to keep those down in the 10, low teen dollars versus, $50, $60, $70 CPM, because you're trying to get impressions more so than trying to get a direct action. If you're doing direct action, you want to be more focused on maybe the CPA or cost per click, because you're not really necessarily trying to brand, you're trying to sell product. So you want to keep your goals in mind also when you're buying your media. You put that goal up front and center. What am I trying to do? Nurture, build brand, be top of mind, communicate, or am I trying to just get sales? So the difference in that goal can actually determine which one of those metrics is going to be more important to you. As far as money, how much money should you spend? I would say on average, You want to spend about between 7 and 10% of your sales budget on marketing and advertising. Me, I'd recommend more because we spend so much time getting it right that we can afford to spend more. Now, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to be scared to spend more than 5% because you figure that money down the tube. But because we do so much test tubing and analyzing that, I feel comfortable telling my clients to spend 10 to 15% in advertising because, one, we're going to dominate the marketplace and we're going to be the main, that's going to be all people are going to see because we've done our homework. I wouldn't feel that confident telling that to somebody who I'm not working with because I'm not sure what they are doing. I'm not sure what type of goals they have, what type of product they're selling. So I want to use a generic number when I'm saying, hey, 7, 8%, that's a good number. Working with me, we're going to the double digits because we're going to dominate. And we're going to get that money back because we're doing our homework. Now, if you're a startup company, you want to spend more money up front than somebody who's been out there doing it for a while. So if you're a startup company, I'm thinking you're about 25, 30%. You really want to get your name out there. People don't know who you are. They're not going to buy from you if they don't know who you are. So if you're a startup company, you're going to spend more money media buying on your media, on your advertising and promotion than somebody who's been out there for a while. Now, as I stated earlier, you want to make sure once you've started and you've gotten this money out here, you can start what we call test tubing or watching the KPIs and the metrics. And the items that are really performing, you start putting more money on those, and the ones that are performing poorly, you get rid of those. And even a startup company, you'll start to see those numbers coming down. You get bigger return on your money because you have the data in front of you. So as we wrap this up, just understand that media buying is a discipline. It's like anything else. You need to know what you're doing when you're spending money, particularly if you're doing these big media buys. You may want to get somebody to at least, like myself, just look at it. Say, look, just look at my budget. Look at what I'm trying to do. Look at my goals, and can we get like an hour consultation on that? And you're talking about you spending thousands and tens of thousands of dollars. And the last thing I want to say before I go, just because, let's say you were spending, let's say $1,000 a month on radio, you can't decide that you're going to stop spending $1,000 a month and then go over to Facebook or YouTube or somewhere and spend $50 a month and get the same result. And that's been a tragic mistake for many small companies. If you spend $1,000 a month on radio station, you're going to have to spend about that same amount of money in digital media to get the same kind of results. Now, it's going to be some variation, depends on the industry and so forth, but you can't go 10% of what you were spending before and expect the same results. The metrics are pretty much the same because one thing, an impression on social media is not quite the same as an impression on radio. A radio impression is a little more valuable, in my opinion. Of course, the folks in social media and digital marketing might argue with me, but I'll take that argument any day of the week. I've seen it. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up today. This is the Marketing Pulpit.